They're going to be doing the vendors arcade. We're doing the vendors arcade. They are going to be doing the fisherman's wharf, and the entire front of the waterfront is going to be redone. Basically, we're going to be looking at the shops, but I want to ensure that the tenants are going to, the arrangement, none of the tenants are going to be moved, and none of the vendors are going to be moved. The existing vendors will remain so that they can ply their trade. There's going to be no displacement of workers, vendors, or tenants.
Prime Minister Pierre has emphasized that a major benefit for the country with the solidification of this partnership is the settlement of an outstanding debt of $20 million owed by the St. Lucia Air and Seaports Authority, SLASPA.
GPH, they've built ports in the Bahamas, they are in Antigua, and all these ports, particularly in the Bahamas, GPH is a worldwide company, and the number of visitors, number of cruise passengers have increased anytime there have been a work done by GPH, because they bring an array of services, they bring a lot of experience to the ports. We're very excited, and we're told that the port should be ready by 2024. I look forward to that date.
And what will GPH be getting out of this deal? In the initial announcement about the proposed deal, it was revealed that the independent cruise port operator would manage the island's cruise ports for 30 years with a possibility of a 10-year extension.
It's a 30-year agreement, and GPH shares the head tax to the government of St. Lucia.
How much of it are they sharing?
I think to every passenger that comes, I think the country gets, there's a minimum amount, I'm going to figure there's a minimum amount the country will get. Well, 40 years, I'm sure you're going to be dead. You'll be alive. So, so in 20 years' time, I can't see what will happen. But the arrangement now is a 40-year concession agreement, which is actually an agreement that was signed several times by the last government. An MOU several by the last government.
According to reports, the port operator would invest approximately $47 million to enhance the Castries Harbour and Soufrière waterfront.
These things, as you know, you can't really put a price to these projects, because you know in the supply business, prices go up all the time. But what I know for a fact is that GPH are going to pay $20 million worth of debt belonging to SLASPA. So SLASPA is going to get that debt out of the books.
With the new deal, a scholarship initiative was also launched by GPH, which will be administered by the Port Operators Philanthropic Foundation. 10 students will be awarded scholarships each year, supporting their educational journey through university level. For the DBS News World, I am Zane Romulus.
Well, let's get into one more regional update that sticks with the stories with regards to ports here in the Caribbean, and it's coming from Antigua and Barbuda. Now, it's not a very pleasant story. It actually involves tragic news with regards to an accident that has left one man dead. Well, the Antigua and Barbuda Port Authority is to tighten enforcement of safety measures in the wake of an accident that took place last month, in which the death of an employee at Carib Seas, Denroy Harrigan, succumbed to injuries sustained after a reversing truck at the cargo port at Deepwater Harbour pinned him against a container on July 18th. Port manager Darwin Talmack has provided an update while paying tribute to the deceased. This report from Antigua and Barbuda.
Port manager Darwin Telmack says changes are afoot to tighten safety regulations at the facility.
That remains our core objective, that everyone who comes to work is given a safe place to work, and at the end they can go home to be with their families who they work so hard to take care of.
Telmack shares the police investigations are ongoing into the tragic incident on July 19.
Police have come by, they've spoken to our security people, they've looked at the information we've had, they looked at the site, they've seen everything, and they are compiling their reports. We too have had some discussions with the owner of the truck, the driver of the truck, and We've learned some things. We've shared that with the police.
While there has been no definitive indication of liability, Telmac explains the port will be increasing its safety compliance measures.
I have spoken to our lawyers. I've spoken to the team from Carib Seas. I've spoken to my management team as well. We are rolling out some new initiatives focusing on safety and adherence to the safety requirements that we are putting in place.
The port manager says the measures will be strict. The first step is analysis.
No doubt we're going to look at what could be done to have prevented that, what we ought to do to strengthen the focus on safety, what we ought to do to ensure that there is a strong focus on compliance.
He says in some cases it will not be the crafting of new restrictions, but the strict enforcement of existing safety measures.
Those are going to be some tough positions that we're going to take going forward as it relates to hardening and demanding compliance to safety.
Hilly Humphreys, ABS News.
That news coming from Antigua and Barbuda. They are to tighten their security measures and their safety measures following the tragic death of one of the staff at Carib Seas at the Deepwater Harbour. That gentleman, Devon Harrigan, was pinned against a container by a reversing truck. Ladies and gentlemen, we take a break here on AM Prime. Upon our return, we'll welcome our first guest for this edition of the program. We'll be right back after these messages.
We exposed 5 strangers to KFC's delicious chicken to see if any time could be KFC time. And at the first bite, the party began. We repeated the experiment during the day, during business hours, on weekends, with sunshine, with rain, and it's confirmed. KFC's flavor makes anytime KFC time. KFC, it's finger licking good.
My name is Carl Media, and I'm the founder and the host of Ever Increasing Voice Ministries. Join me every Saturday and Sunday on WESN, this powerful station, at 9 a.m. on Saturdays, 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. nightly. Also on Sundays, I'll be on at 7 a.m., 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. at night time. When you come here, we are getting people heavenly ready.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
The best great tickets are at thebesttoys.com. Shop for the best brands you love at the best prices. Like VTech, Leapfrog, Fisher-Price, Play-Doh, Hot Wheels, Barbie, Cocomelon, LOL, Baby Alive, Crayola. Visit us in-store at Forces Flagship MacBean. Shop online now at thebesttoys.com. Order via call or WhatsApp at 32DBEST to order. And remember, we have the best toys at the best prices.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this, screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
welcome back to the program, and thank you for being with us again this morning, ladies and gentlemen. Now, what started with just a simple purse in 2017 has now grown to a non-profit organization that can be found in over 7 jurisdictions. I'm speaking of a non-governmental organization known as Hopeful Handbags, and I'm joined by the president of Hopeful Handbags Global Caribbean, Mr. Clyde Robinson. Good morning, sir, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago, and good morning, sir, and how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Great. Just a bit tired, man.
I feel you, but thank you very much for joining me this morning. Hopeful Handbags, again, as I started the conversation, started with a purse in 2017, but the name of the actual organization may not give hint to precisely its purpose. Could you kindly expand on what Hopeful Handbags are?
Well, Hopeful Handbags really based in Florida, headed by Kathleen Miner. She's the CEO and founder. Started not in 2017, but 2019. Introduced it to Trinidad and Tobago, and then I take up that responsibility of taking on the job of the head of the Caribbean. It was not easy for me, being a male going into this. At first, didn't know what I'm getting myself into. Being a survivor also of some type of abuse, I take up that, challenge.
Mm-hmm. So, how does Hopeful Handbags actually have its impact upon the conversation of domestic abuse and domestic abuse survivors? What is its role in that particular conversation and the fight against domestic abuse?
What we do, we actually fill handbags, stuff to give out to survivors. What we do is hold programs, in schools, in the community, starting that conversation. One of the questions we ask, if you're in a safe space or if you're feeling safe. And then the conversation starts from there. From there, we try to get help through the gender-based unit and the witness and victim support unit. So we work alongside of them.
Mm-hmm. Now, let's go back to what you were saying about your involvement. When did you learn about Hopeful Handbags and how did you become involved?
Well, a friend of mine introduced me to Hopeful Handbag, and I was like, what this organization is all about, because I have my own organization also, Karate School, Fitness Unlimited Learning Center. So since we are already doing charity work, so let's me try and, get involved with this organization. And at first I didn't understand Hopeful Handbag, get bags. So I just started getting bags, not knowing I have to get products to put in the bag. So when Kathleen hold that meeting with me, and I understand, I said, okay, and then we just start from there, filling handbags and start giving out to survivors. Whether we have mail bags too. Once you're a survivor, you have to get one of those bags.
Mm-hmm. And what are the contents of those bags?
Anything of female use, like cologne, sanitary napkins, makeups, name it. We have it in those bags to give to females. What we do too, we actually train them in self-defense, how to stop that threat. You never know when that threat is coming, and that awareness. So once you're aware of what is happening around you, whether on the street, in your home, in your relationship, that will indicate now that you need to get help. Speak to someone that you trust to get that help.
Mm-hmm. Now, I would assume that given that it's Hopeful Handbags, it doesn't really sway much to the assistance with meals, but is that incorrect? Does Hopeful Handbags also assist male victims of domestic abuse?
Yes, it basically started with females. Being the head of the Caribbean, Kathleen also deal with males, but we have male bags also. So I think it's last year we had a number of males coming forward because we have a safe space, so they normally come forward and hold that conversation. So we try to get help for them. One of the challenges, we are looking to have a safe house for males also, because we know that we have a lot of safe houses for females, but for males we don't really have. I don't know of any safe houses for male.
So let's actually expand on that for a bit. You said even yourself as a male, getting involved in this organization at first was a bit odd, but that ice was broken. Now you're saying that you saw a lot more men coming forward last year with regards to domestic abuse because it is a safe space. Now there is this entire perception of gender within domestic abuse, that it is really only females who are the victims. There are men that are also involved. But are we seeing more males actually now stating that, listen, you know, I'm a victim as well. I would like that level of outreach and assistance?
What we try to do is create that safe space for male, because, as you know, male don't really express the way they feel. But once they can hold that conversation and make them feel comfortable, they give you bit by bit. And then, you know, they start to open up. I mean, we see males actually broke down because they don't want to hurt somebody. Not that they can do it, but they pull themselves back, and they really need that help. But to get help, they need that space that they can come without being judged. That's one of the things, being judged. Oh, you're a male, you can, you know, you're a man, you can do this, you can do that. It's not that easy, because I've been in that position also. And I came out early because I know the level of skills that I have, and I say, you know, this is not for me, and I walk away. You know, some people don't have that mindset to walk away, so we need to, you know, empower the males, because males are being abused.
Now, you are the president of Hopeful Handbags Global Caribbean, and what makes your job a bit more interesting is the fact that you deal with many jurisdictions that fall under the Caribbean because of the various islands, because of cultures, because of laws, because of regulations, even because of stigmas associated with the various cultures. How difficult does this make your job in wanting to execute it as best as possible?
Well, we have to do a lot of investigation in terms of the culture, get the right person in the Caribbean. Let me give you an example. I grew up in Barbados, so I actually have one of my schools in Barbados. So the head instructor over there, it make it easy for me to start that chapter in Barbados. I have a group. Because I understand the culture there, it makes it much easier for me. St. Vincent's a bit different. They're a bit laid back. It's so different in terms of you make that report if you're not married. It's easier for you to get help if you're married. It's very difficult if you're not married to get help, you know, in St. Vincent. So there's a lot of different barriers that we have to deal with. We're just trying to get the right person in the right place. St. Vincent, however, we have 3 police officers on board, so they are advising us and giving us that guidance. And we have a counselor there on board also. So it makes it much easier for us to actually go into that country. I will be traveling to this country to provide training, because all of our staff are trained. They have to be trained how to deal with any type of trauma when it arrives. To you, and how to point them to the professionals to get that professional help.
By what you just said, is it that you are suggesting that there are great, tremendous cultural barriers in trying to actually have that level of outreach and assistance to domestic abuse victims?
Yes. It's for us, it's very difficult because understanding and training St. Louis is a challenge. Grenada is a challenge, because you have to empower the persons who you actually want to run the organization. Once you empower them, then you have to start doing outreach, bringing that awareness about who for handbag and what we do. And sometimes people not paying attention. Sometimes it just it's normal. We're not getting help, so we're going to deal with it. So that's one of the challenges that we are facing at the moment. So it's basically what we're trying to do is going to community by community and pass that message on to the people on the ground.
Now, based off of your experiences and the work that you've done with this particular organization and all that has been achieved, is there a great number of instances where you have survivors actually going back to the household or to the individual of which they were facing abuse in the first place?
Yes, those are some of the things that happen, because when you realize, right, when you go in let's say you go in a safe house for 3 months, when you leave from that safe house, where you're going, because it doesn't really have a step-down facility that you can go. So one of the goals for us, we are looking for some land to build that step-down facility so that at least it could be still secure. If you don't have a job, you gotta try and get a job for you, and you stay there until you can transit from that step-down facility to your own place. I mean, sometimes where you're gonna go when you leave from a safe house, or if you go by a family member, some people only consider for so long. Where you're gonna go, so you always go back to that person. And one of the things that we am in conversation with is try to reach that person, that abuser. We are trying to reach them because they also need help. So one of the goals is to reach them, and if we can help them, we can help the survivor or help someone who's going through abuse. But they also have trauma.
This mentorship that you speak about, does this fall under the Shine a New program?
No, everything that we're doing fall on the forefront. So we are trying to partner with persons who will, assist us in terms of, we need a facility, first thing, to help these survivors in some way or the other. We just need that space because I'm actually operating my offices. I turn my apartment into office space, training space, storeroom. We have clothes that if a survivor need something, like if they get a job and they need a suit, we can let them come, pick it out themselves, things that we want to do to empower them. Let them come and choose what they want to do.
So let's speak about the support that you receive. Has that support, is it there? Is that support well established?
Yes. First thing I want to thank First Citizen. They've been helping us with things to put in the handbags, helping us with handbags. They've been supportive. Every time we ask for something, they try their best to get it to us. Digicel, they give us some e-voucher, that's for food hampers. Ministry of Energy, they give us back to school supplies. I want to thank them. So the support is there, and the other companies will, come on board, give, little what they can give to us.
But within each jurisdiction, within the Caribbean also, you have those who are volunteering to assist with this level of outreach, with the programs and the mentorship involved.
Yeah. Barbados, for Barbados, we have our consular, we have law enforcement there. We're going to start a program up there soon. We are looking to get the government to sponsor. We're in conversation. So that will be a program to spread that word of, among the community. St. Vincent, we're still working on getting that support. We are talking to some companies to do that program this year or early next year. But I'll be traveling to meet and greet with these officials when I go over.
Mr. Robinson, the level of support is there, especially from corporate entities, as you've just mentioned. You even suggested, I think, in St. Vincent, you've got 3 police officers that are, there and assisting. Is still, though, as much as there is that assistance from corporations, the level of awareness, is that there? We have all these conversations all the time, but is that awareness really there?
To be honest, I'll be honest to you, no, it's not there. What we are trying to do in Hope for Handbag is do a carrier van going into these communities, not in a place that message cannot reach that survivor, because it's hard for sometimes a survivor to come to these events. So we're trying to say, let's use Trinidad. We want to go in every community, in every community center, and do that program, do a walkabout, give out flyers, so they can get that contact number to call if you need help, with these institutions. So we want to do that in every country, bring that awareness, go into the area, do walkabouts, talk to people, meet with people. They might not say they are being abused, but if you get that message, how they can get help, who they can contact. Most times they don't know who they can contact, or they're not motivated, or they're scared. How we can get those persons to actually, build that courage to call someone. So we have to build that trust, and Hope for Handbag is here. We build that trust because if the male coming forward, which means something is happening.
And as I always like to conclude, for those watching this morning who would like to get involved, to perhaps play their part, whatever role that may be, or even donate towards the cause, how can they contact you?
All right, we have our own hotline. You can call, you can message, we rather you message. Some calls you can, but it's 481-0994. 481-0994. Once you call or you message, someone will get to the message.
Mr. Robinson, as we part this morning, and thank you for making the time once more to join me and expound on this conversation. If you can just leave us with one message with regards to this fight, with regards to bringing awareness, what would that be?
If you see something, say something. Just remember, together we are stronger.
Certainly. Mr. Robinson, thank you so much for your time this morning, and thank you very much for your efforts, the organization's efforts, for all those who are doing their part, volunteering, working with the organization, donating to the organization. Thank you very much to everyone involved, and wishing you all the very best.
Thank you, sir.
Do have a good day. And that was Mr. Clyde Robinson. He is the president of Hopeful Handbags Global Caribbean. A rather interesting organization indeed, and how it was actually established, starting off with a simple purse back in 2017 to now being involved globally. All that is happening. But I thought it was rather interesting, from my perspective, that here is this individual who is the president of Hopeful Handbags Caribbean. And you've got to learn the various laws. You've got to be aware of the cultures and the stigmas associated with these cultures, and wanting to actually do your part in addressing domestic abuse and also assisting survivors. But also those who are abusers, as Mr. Robinson said, there is assistance for them as well. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, we take a break here on the program. When we return, we'll get into some more regional updates. Stay tuned.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit?
Yes.
What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole. It's for all of us in public.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you, what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through? Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
What's the best way to grab the attention of viewers? Please exercise more patience. You have to be kidding me.
Doing what we do best.
I'll say at the very least it's a conspiracy of laziness against the people.
Join me, Keaton Shaw.
And me, Sean Michael Small, for Talking Point.
Weekdays from 8 a.m. to 9:30 a.m.
We go in-depth on the trending issues and engage the most controversial newsmakers
as we get them to account to the people for their actions.
You can't go to the government with nothing. You can't go to cabinet with an empty hand, with a wish.
I'm glad that we're having this a sober, mature discussion.
In the present situation, I expect a continuation of the chaos.
Join us for the discussion, Mondays to Fridays,
only on WESN,
the content capital.
My name is Carl Media, and I'm the founder and the host of Ever Increasing Voice Ministries. Join me every Saturday and Sunday on WESN, this powerful station, at 9 a.m. on Saturdays, 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. nightly. Also on Sundays, I'll be on at 7 a.m., 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. at night time. When you come here, we are getting people heavenly ready.
This city can't hold me, my vibe's too high, and my heart it told me jump right now, you will touch the sky. Feel my love unfolding like a laughing flame. All who did not know me when not done, they gon' know the name. Million people coming down, dancing to a song. Love is life and life is love, blessings from above. Can you feel the love that's in the air? Well, if you feel it, let me hear you say, dancing, moving everywhere. If you feel it, let me hear you say, na 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 na, eh na 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 na.
When I lost and can't find my way, is your love help me elevate? And when they try to block, I still come again. It's the way you lift me up, I could never give it up, no.
This is the way we celebrate independence. This is how it should be done. An event like this brings everybody out. All different race, creed, everything. This is our country. And how is the best way to celebrate our independence? With our national anthem. The vision I had 6 years ago, trying to make people happy. We started this event not to stop. This event must continue. And at independence, we could celebrate it together as a country. Even though the hard things, struggles, we will always remain together as one people. Thank you.
Welcome back to AM Prime. Let's continue with some regional updates now as we look at what's taking place in Guyana. While the Irfan Ali-led administration commemorates 3 years in office, the Vice President, Dr. Bharat Jagdeo, has defended the government's initiatives put in place to help people cope with a rising cost of living. Meanwhile, Guyana's Minister of Finance says the country's rapid growth would require increasing its debt ceiling. Let's take a look at this report from Guyana.
Conversation can be had about non-oil extractives, bauxite, gold, manganese, and so many other sectors, all of which, sir, reflect increased private investment and are poised for rapid growth. Let me also say, sir, that it isn't rocket science that as one's asset base and earning capacity increases, one's capacity to contract and carry debt also increases. I would venture, sir, to suggest that there isn't a single household in the whole of Guyana that does not understand this very fundamental concept.
What is this ambitious program that you're talking about? If you intend to increase the debt ceilings, both local and external, then you have an intention to borrow for various projects. And our question to you is to tell us what are those projects. That is what we would like to know. So I don't know if we are to expect in this country another Skeldon sugar factory. They borrowed for Skeldon sugar factory.
That report coming from Guyana. Now moving across to Haiti to bring you an update with what's taking place there. The United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres has welcomed an offer by Kenya to lead a multinational force into Haiti after the weak government there continues to battle for control of the island nation against powerful gang formations. This follows calls from the United Nations officials for the deployment of an international security force to help stabilize the country that for months have appeared to have fallen on deaf ears. Kenya's offer to positively consider leading a multinational force could see the Security Council of the United Nations authorize such a mandate in the days or weeks ahead. This report with regards to Haiti.
The United Nations has long compared Haiti to a country that finds itself in the midst of an armed conflict, and the absence of an international specialized force to support the national police in stabilizing the security situation has left Haiti in a deteriorating security environment and a civilian population facing unbearable living conditions.
The Secretary General welcomes Kenya's positive response to his call for the urgently needed international non-UN security support to Haiti. He values Kenya's consideration to possibly lead a non-UN multinational force, and he expresses his gratitude for the solidarity expressed by the Kenyan government. The Secretary General reiterates his call to the Security Council to support such a non-UN international operation and encourages member states, particularly from the region, to join forces with Kenya.
A statement from Kenya's Foreign Ministry expressed a commitment to deploy 1,000 police officers to help train and assist Haitian police restore normalcy in the country and protect strategic installations. Nairobi indicated that its decision was in support of persons of African descent around the world, while aligning with the African Union's diaspora policy. It also said that its proposed deployment would crystallize once the UN Security Council had passed a resolution laying out the mission's mandate. The United States is the pen holder on all Haiti-related council resolutions.
We welcome Kenya's decision to lead the multinational force. We will be working on a resolution to support that effort. The government of Haiti asked for this support. They asked the Security Council to provide support, and we will be working with other members of the Security Council on a resolution that will give the Kenyans what they require to establish their presence in Haiti.
a view echoed by the State Department that commended Kenya's decision.
The United States, along with Ecuador, are going to introduce a resolution at the UN Security Council to take that step. That's the first step that needs to happen. The second step is that the government of Kenya needs to conduct an assessment mission, which they plan to do in the coming days and weeks. And then once they have conducted that assessment mission, they, as the lead of this multinational force, will talk with other partners about what additional type of assistance they need, what other countries might participate. That will kick off a series of discussions of which the United States will, of course, be a party.
The Secretary General has long appealed for the international community to demonstrate solidarity with Haiti, a country that has spiraled after multiple natural disasters, weak governance leading to the rise of vigilante groups, and further compounded by the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse in 2021. Sherwin Brycepease, SABC News, New York.
That update coming with regards to Haiti, an international security force Kenya is offering to lead that charge over what seems to be a cry that has been falling on deaf ears. The United Nations Security Council, there is a possibility that it can meet this week to push forward with such plans. However, not entirely sure how far this is going to go. We'll see, but of course here on AM Prime we will bring you the updates as we go along. Now let's go across to the island nation of Grenada. We've got a history-making moment as Grenada held its first ever investiture ceremony on the sister isle of Petite Martinique. This update from Grenada.
For the first time in history, Governor General, Her Excellency Dame Cécile Lagrenade, held an investiture ceremony outside of her office in St. George. The special ceremony, which was held in Petite Martinique, saw the presentation of a medal from King Charles III to Miss Emma Logan, bestowing upon her the title of Member of British Empire, MBE, for her outstanding contribution to business. The Governor General, in her remarks, said investiture ceremonies are meaningful not only for the awardees and their immediate families, but also for the rest of society, describing them as a formal expression of the positive difference, service, commitment and dedication made by outstanding men and women in the country. The Governor General said Ms. Logan went beyond the call of duty and her hard work have not gone unnoticed.
You have contributed immensely to Petite Martinique and the state of Grenada. Investiture ceremonies are not only meaningful to the recipients of awardees, their families and friends, but also to our society as a whole. They are the formal expression of the difference that a commitment, dedication, and service of our outstanding individuals, men and women, are making to the well-being of our nation and its people. This award is a tangible expression of our gratitude for your outstanding work and utmost dedication to serving our nation, the well-being of our nation and its people.
Miss Morgan, who is the mother of 4 boys, including Roman Catholic priest Father Logan, was the first person in Petite Martinique to own and operate a guest house. She was described as a woman of perseverance, and her contribution is said to have influenced the lives of her community members.
As we recognize Mrs. Logan today, we are reminded of the power of dedication, perseverance, and excellence. Her unwavering commitment to her field has not only brought her personal success, but has also made a positive impact on our community of Petite Martinique, inspiring countless others to strive for greatness.
At present, she owns Emma's Supermarket and Hardware. For BN News, I am Rena Thomas reporting.
That update coming from Grenada. Moving across now to Cuba. The Cuban Boxing Federation has announced the creation of a women's national team after female athletes were prevented from competing in previous Olympics. Some good news coming out of Cuba. Let's take a look at this update.
Well, staying overseas for a minute, Cuba is opening doors for the next generation of boxers as the Cuban Boxing Federation announces the creation of a women's national team.
NBC News reporter Ed Augustin introduces us to Cuba's newest stars in the ring.
Eliani de la Caridad Garcia was over the moon when she heard the news.
Lo que hice fue saltar de alegría, abrazar a la niña, abrazar a mi abuela, a la familia, de que ya entonces ella podía ser una boxeadora.
This athlete could barely believe the news.
Me llamaron por teléfono, me dijeron, aprobaron el bolseo y yo dije, bueno, porque ya yo como que, no sé, como que ya había pasado tanto tiempo y no creía que fuera, porque muchas veces habían dicho que sí.
Cuba, known as a boxing powerhouse, finally authorizing women's boxing. The small island nation has punched above its weight at the Olympics. In the men's category, Cuba is the second country with the most gold medals after the US. But since the 1959 Cuban Revolution, the country has dominated the sport at the Games. But though women have been able to box in the Olympics since 2012, Cuban women had been excluded. The island's Boxing Federation citing safety concerns.
Querían saber realmente si el bolseo no afectaba a la mujer como para, no sé, para tener hijos.
But many in today's team think the ban was patronizing.
Claro que era injusto, súper injusto, como ya le decía, las mujeres tenemos los mismos derechos de los hombres. Incluso hay mujeres albañiles, hay mujeres judocas, taekwondokas, hay mujeres en pesa, en lucha, y por qué no también boxeadoras, por supuesto.
With the ban lifted last December, the team is finally out of the starting blocks. And last month, taking a silver and 2 bronzes in the Central American and Caribbean Games held in El Salvador. The goal now, to qualify for next year's Paris Olympics. But given some on the team only put on boxing gloves for the first time last year, just qualifying for the Games will be the fight of their lives.
El boxeo en nuestro país ha comenzado sin una base sólida. Es decir, que no hay una fortaleza técnica para pensar en ese resultado de inmediato.
But that won't stop them giving their all.
El sueño de todo atleta es llegar a la Olimpiada. Mi sueño es ese, estar en lo más alto del podio.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the...
Well, we ended this morning's regional update coming from the island of Barbados. Bridgetown came alive in the wee hours for Saturday morning as thousands of revelers took to the streets for the Colour Shop and Kuman Federal Morning Jam. Let's take a look at this report from Barbados.
Twice the number of bands on the road this year, and perhaps twice the fun. 32 bands with more than 10,000 revelers, many covered in paint, took to the streets of Bridgetown for the popular 4-day morning jam. While last year marked the return of the street party since the COVID-19 pandemic, this year the people were out in their numbers.
We missed 3 years, and that's we back on the road now. It's the first spectacle. You see my band, it's beautiful, it's colorful, it's fantastic.
It was the first year on the road for Passion, the 4-day morning experience. Band leader Shanice Burgess said they merged with more established band Road Warriors. Combined, they had about 350 revelers on the road.
I love soca. I live for crop over. I listen to soca music from January to December, so that is it for me. I love designing. I'm a creative, so yeah, we're just here on the road having a blast.
Last year, band leader of 3-7 family Kevin Gobin told us he would be back in 2023, a promise he's kept.
Yes, there was a last-minute rush, a big last-minute rush. Right, a big rush where you get enough more people coming. I mean, yes, if you look at the band's swell.
If we band, we got Carrie Corn band, we got people from Ghana, Jamaica, VC, Barbados. So everybody's coming enjoying themselves at one.
And in a show of true Caribbean unity, St. Lucian event promoter Manuel Payne took in his first 4-day experience after hosting a Barbadian DJ for his country's carnival last month.
This year, Skills came on with the biggest band in St. Lucia just for fun. And he played on our Juve. It's similar to the 4-day, same time zone. So it's a step in the right direction. Coming out from last year, doing 2 events, coming into this year, he doubled up on those amount of events. So it's just growing, it's more unity, and everyone, all the St. Lucian DJs and a lot of the artists have enough respect and love for him. So I like it. And that's a vision I like. Because I do it in St. Lucia, I come to Barbados, and now I do it in Trinidad as well. It's just unifying everything, it's one culture.
This year, the bands moved off from 3 starting points: Queen's Park, the BTII car park on Bay Street, and the BIDC on Harbour Road. The jump culminated on the mighty Griner Highway. Sharika Griffith, CBC News.
Well, I suppose that's a delightful way to end AM Prime this morning. Yes, we're concluding this program, this edition at least, a bit earlier than normal. Thank you very much for joining me this morning. Wishing you a grand day ahead. Hope it's a wonderful start to the week. And you can join me again tomorrow morning from 6 o'clock for AM Prime. Hopefully it's the full edition. But this morning, this is where we conclude. I'm Keaton Shaw. This has been WESN Content Capital's Premier Morning Show, and we'll see you again tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.
WESN.
I am Rondell Donowa, and you are watching WESN, the Content Capital.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit? Yes. What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive, it is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole, it's for all of us in public.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
As you age, there is an increased risk of being diagnosed with arthritis, but younger individuals can get affected as well.
When you tell them, but no, I need you to move your joints. You need to move it, otherwise it gets stiffer and it exacerbates the problem. There's that misconception that if I move it, it's more pain.
So if you're to focus on these risk factors, then to me, it will help a large portion of the population probably prolong, I should say, the inevitable, because inevitably you will develop arthritis.
What's Up Doc? Every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
As Kevin Hart would say, damn! Why we have so much minors out on the streets? There's an after-school program happening there.
Side women, don't give up. You know, you can become queen one day.
Those companies who are currently looking for their money that they deposited in the Silicon Valley Bank, it's not there. ChatGPT is basically the start of Terminator. Our relationship with the colonial powers is like a relationship with a little bit of abuse that people like to stay in. And we remember how that was. Put in $100 and later tonight, you'll get back $3,000. I promise you. Or promise you not. Did you rent an accent while you were across there?
When you're in the proximity of Donald Trump, somehow you adopt his aura.
First of all, I thought that $200 would be more than enough. It's $200.
I was a goat farmer. I had 3 goats. Yeah, 3 goats and 1 cow. You know the name?
No, I don't.
Right, Messi, LeBron, and Cristiano Ronaldo. And the cow named Haaland.
I love Trinidad and Tobago, you know.
My name is Carl Media, and the founder and the host of Ever Increasing Voice Ministries. Join me every Saturday and Sunday on WESN, this powerful station, at 9 a.m. on Saturdays, 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. nightly. Also on Sundays, I'll be on at 7 a.m., 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. at night time. When you come here, we are getting people heavenly ready.
We are WESN, the premier platform for Caribbean content. WESN, covering West, East, South, and North. WESN, we entertainment, sports, and news. WESN, available on Greendot 7, Amplia 118, Airlink 17, Bmobile 107, Digicel 21, ICNTT 105, and Flow 110. Connect with us at WESNCC or stream online at www.wesncc.com. WESN, your premier platform for Caribbean content.
It's the latest flare-up in the long-seething territorial conflict over the disputed waters. The Philippines is demanding that Beijing cease what it describes as unlawful activities in the South China Sea. Manila has summoned the Chinese ambassador after the Coast Guard fired a water cannon to block a Filipino supply boat, describing the manoeuvre as excessive and offensive. Karis Garland has more.
Fresh tensions over a long-standing dispute. This video released by the Philippine Coast Guard shows their Chinese counterparts blasting a water cannon at a Philippine supply boat. The vessel was on its way to deliver provisions to Philippine troops stationed on Second Thomas Shoal, a submerged reef in the South China Sea. Then, in a move Manila has labelled excessive and offensive, the Chinese Coast Guard appears to block the supply boat's path. Speaking to the press on Monday, the Philippines said Beijing had no right whatsoever to impede its vessels.
We demand that the government of the People's Republic of China immediately cease and desist all its coercive, unlawful, and unacceptable activities in the West Philippine Sea.
China, for its part, said the Philippines' boats had illegally entered its waters. Beijing claims almost all of the South China Sea, an assertion rejected internationally. The United States, the European Union, and key allies like Australia and Japan all expressed support for Manila in the wake of the incident. The U.S. State Department said the maneuvers were unwarranted interference in lawful Philippine maritime operations.
Such actions by the People's Republic of China are inconsistent with international law and are the latest in repeated threats to the status quo in the South China Sea, directly threatening regional peace and stability.
The Philippine military has occupied Second Thomas Shoal since 1999, when it deliberately marooned a Navy ship on the reef. China has long demanded the ship's removal and has in the past used lasers and water cannons to prevent Manila from delivering supplies to the atoll.
Staying in the region, at least 23 people were injured and dozens of buildings collapsed after a 5.4 magnitude earthquake struck eastern China in the early hours of Sunday. It was the strongest to hit the province there in more than a decade. Charlotte Hughes has more.
Here in eastern China, the aftermath of an earthquake which struck in the early hours of Sunday is clear for all to see. Dozens of residents have been injured and some have suffered damage to their homes. The quake struck 26 kilometers south of the city of Digicel in Shandong province, according to the US Geological Survey. It's the strongest to have hit the province in more than 10 years and was felt as far away as Shanghai, some 800 kilometers away from the epicenter. Despite damage to some buildings, water and communications infrastructure remained intact. A rescue team has been sent to Shandong province by China's Ministry of Emergency Management.
Finally, for now, in sports news, European champions England are through to the quarterfinals of the Women's World Cup after beating Nigeria on penalties. The match ended 0-0 after extra time. The Lionesses won the shootout 4-2, missing just one attempt at goal. They've been favourites to win the tournament since defending champs the US were eliminated in a penalty shootout loss to Sweden on Sunday. England will now face Colombia or Jamaica in the quarterfinals in Sydney next Saturday. That's it from us for now, but do stay with us for more world news here on France 24.
From North to South Africa, from Bamako to Nairobi, from Accra to Mogadishu. Bringing you all the political, economic, cultural and social news from Africa for a better insight into an ever-changing continent.
Across Africa, presented by Georgia Calvin-Smith on France 24 and France24.com.
This is a representative of Iran's supreme leader at a tourist destination in southern Iran. He is personally going around to order the closure of any shop where women are not wearing the Islamic headscarf. This is the latest example of how religious authorities in Iran are trying to enforce Islamic dress codes after months of protest have broken them down. Authorities have begun imposing fines and refusing service, like in public transportation, airports, and hospitals, to women who refuse to wear the hijab. Shopkeepers have been urged to enforce hijab rules on their customers or face closure. Iranian women, however, say this crackdown will not stop them from fighting for social freedoms. One of them is our observer Pandar. She spoke to us under condition of anonymity for her safety, and her words will be read by an actress.
Aujourd'hui, je porte juste une chemise et un pantalon, pas d'autres vêtements, et cela ne m'a jamais posé de problème. Pendant les dernières vacances de Nowruz, j'ai voyagé dans de nombreuses villes et visité de nombreuses attractions touristiques, et je n'ai pas eu de problème. Les autorités tentent de monter les commerçants contre les gens, mais elles n'y parviendront pas. Des vidéos montrent des femmes sans hijab se faire refuser l'entrée d'aéroports ou de stations de métro. Nous avons le sentiment que la République islamique fait cela principalement pour que ses partisans puissent dire « Regardez, nous n'avons pas abandonné, nous nous battrons ». C'est surtout de la propagande. À mon avis, ils ne peuvent rien y faire. Des millions de femmes refusent le hijab obligatoire et la République islamique n'a ni la main-d'œuvre ni l'argent pour s'en prendre à ces millions de femmes. La police a promis de commencer à sévir, mais j'ai continué à porter la même tenue. Je n'avais pas peur et je me sentais davantage soutenue par les gens dans la rue.
Iranian authorities have also created an official platform where supporters of the regime are able to report drivers they see not wearing a hijab. They put in their license plate number, and the owner of the car will receive a message and a fine. Like this one. Dear car owner, you've committed an offense, this text message says. If this is a mistake, you have 48 hours to appeal via this link. If you repeat this crime, your car will be impounded. But Iranian protesters have found a way around this technology.
Si nous voyons une voiture dans laquelle se trouve une femme portant un hijab ou un tchador, nous signalons la plaque d'immatriculation à la plateforme afin que leur base de données ne fonctionne pas. Le chaos qui s'ensuivra rendra la plateforme totalement inefficace.
A spokesperson for the Iranian police force says they've received thousands of messages from citizens reporting drivers who are breaking dress code regulations. Police also say they've closed down 138 shops and 18 restaurants just on April 15th for hijab noncompliance. The Observer's team, however, was unable to independently verify these numbers. April 21st, Pretoria, South Africa. These police vehicles were deployed to the offices of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR. Their objective? To evict the nearly 100 refugees and asylum seekers who had been camping out front. Among them was Teresa, a refugee from the Democratic Republic of Congo. We spoke to her just after she was evicted.
Devant le bureau des HCR, il y avait beaucoup de gens. Ils sont venus déplacer 31 familles qui campaient là. Nous sommes restés devant l'HCR pendant 11 mois avant d'être expulsés.
The expulsion of the refugees' camps came after more than 3 years of demanding to be resettled in a new country. We spoke to Louise du Plessis, a human rights lawyer who has been following the case.
They don't feel safe in South Africa anymore, and with good reason. There were serious xenophobic attacks in 2019. Some of them lost family members directly from that xenophobic attacks. So that's why they then decided to go and stay in front of the premises of the UNHCR, insisting that they must be resettled. The UNHCR is very strict on resettlement, but then in 2019 what happened was that the men were arrested for trespassing and the women were taken to Lindela, the detention center.
Teresa spent 3 years in the detention center.
Lindela, c'est le centre de concentration. On reçoit seulement la bouillie le matin, 2 tartines sans rien dedans. Il n'y avait pas d'électricité, pas de l'eau chaude. Vous ne pouvez pas sortir.
But after being released from detention in May 2022, the refugees had nowhere else to go, and they returned to camp in front of the UNHCR office.
How it played out on Friday could have been worse. It was very tense. After they were moved away from the UNHCR's office, where they ended up in a park then, that became extremely tense with the police and the Metro Corps, who decided now we're going to arrest them. Until this woman came forward and offered the farm as an option.
C'est ça la maison qu'on nous a donnée. Il y a beaucoup de familles ici.
I mean, these people are extremely traumatized. I mean, there's some of them that's got serious mental health issues. They don't get attention. I don't think they see a lot of hope for themselves.
Laura Paduin, spokesperson for the UNHCR, told us that the office is relieved that the police action to evict the campers was carried out peacefully. 18 people went to Lindela and 70 are staying at the farm. Paduin explained that resettling the refugees to a third country is out of their mandate. That's it for this week. As always, you can find more reports from our observers on our website, observers.france24.com. I'll see you next time.
Follow our international journalists on France 24. Douglas Herbert, Angela Diffley, Robert Parsons, Philip Turle, and Armand Georgian. From the newsroom to the studio or live on air, they are on standby 24/7 to analyse world events. Whether tackling historic, geopolitical, economic or environmental issues, our experts get to the heart of the biggest international news stories. They contribute to our special reports and scour the headlines for information. Follow it live. Follow the news. Follow France 24.
Liberté, égalité, actualité. Worldviews. France 24 brings you all the news from hotspots around the world. In Asia, France, the Middle East, the Americas, and Africa. From Europe to Oceania, take a daily trip across borders to keep abreast of all the latest international news. Get exclusive updates from our correspondents around the globe. Our daily reports will take you to all 4 corners of the world. Every day, watch World Views on France 24 and France24.com. choose Elizabeth, Sarah, Kate, as well as Jeannie, Julia or Catherine. But from July 20th to August 20th, we'll choose Alex. Experience the Women's World Cup with France 24.
Defying the threat of military intervention by regional bloc ECOWAS, Niger's ruling junta says its armed forces stand ready after the deadline passes to reinstate the deposed president. Coup leaders have closed the country's airspace until further notice. Jailed Senegalese opposition leader Ousmane Sonko is admitted to hospital for emergency care. He's been on hunger strike since late last month following a conviction his supporters say was politically motivated. And excessive and offensive, the Philippines hits out at Beijing after its Coast Guard used a water cannon to block a Filipino supply boat in the disputed South China Sea. Welcome to France 24. I'm Sharon Gaffney. Good to have you with us. Well, first this hour, Niger has closed its airspace after defying a deadline imposed by ECOWAS to reinstate the democratically elected president, Mohamed Bazoum. The West African regional bloc issued the ultimatum a week ago, demanding the generals relinquish power by midnight on Sunday or face possible military action. In a statement, coup leaders said that any attempt to violate the country's airspace would be met with an energetic and immediate response. Niger's military spokesman issued this warning to the regional bloc.
The National Council for Safeguarding the Homeland warns ECOWAS, in the pay of this foreign power, against any interference in Niger's internal affairs, as well as the disastrous consequences of this military adventure on the security of our sub-region, its stability and the unity of our community. Faced with the threat of intervention that is becoming clearer through preparation from a neighbouring country, Niger's airspace is closed as of today, Sunday the 6th of August 2023, for all airports until further notice.
Burkina Faso and Mali are sending a joint delegation to Niger. The junta-ruled nations are currently suspended from ECOWAS. France has announced it's suspending development aid and budgetary assistance to the two countries after they warned that any military intervention in Niger would be considered a declaration of war. Well, for more, let's bring in Alex Vines. He's head of the Africa programme at London's Chatham House. Great to have you with us on the programme, Alex. Firstly, what do you make of this decision by Burkina Faso and Mali to send a delegation to Niger, and what does it tell us about the pressure that coup leaders may be feeling?
I think it's indicative of the pressure that ECOWAS is putting on Niger, and so Burkina Faso and Mali are concerned too, because in the end this is about reversing a coup, and the putschists in Ouagadougou and Bamako are equally worried about what that might mean for them in the future, hence coming to Niamey to show a sign of solidarity with the junta in Niger.
And ECOWAS member states, they appear divided on whether or not to intervene in Niger. And here in Europe, Italy is urging the bloc to give the junta more time to reinstate the president. What are you expecting to happen over the coming hours and days? It is a difficult question.
Okay, I think that the best way is to look at the committee of the Chiefs of Defence Staff of ECOWAS that met on Friday last week, and they issued a statement that they were adopting a comprehensive approach, and that means politics, it means diplomacy, and it means security defence. And they also underlined that their primary objective is to hope that the sanctions and other targeted measures result in the military junta restoring constitutional rule and therefore not needing a ECOWAS military intervention. The Commissioner for Peace and Security of the ECOWAS Commission, Abdel Fattah Musa, also underlined that in a number of interviews, including this morning in an interview in Nigeria. So I think we shouldn't expect a military intervention immediately, and we're going to now see the tightening of the sanctions, And the closing of Niger airspace, I think, is a defensive response to that by the junta in Niamey. They are worried. They clearly believe that ECOWAS is serious and they are under increasing pressure.
And after issuing that threat, if ECOWAS doesn't intervene, would that be damaging to its credibility as a regional bloc, do you think?
Well, long term, if there isn't some sort of compromise and off-ramp for the junta, absolutely, that would be not good news for ECOWAS and its chairperson, Bola Tinubu. But I think this is still early days, and there's plenty of shuttle diplomacy taking place right at the moment, as well as informal diplomacy. You saw last week the military junta in Niamey say, well, we don't want to be in power for very long. We want a quick process, transitional process pending democratic elections. That to me already suggests that there is some compromise going on in thinking, and we'll see over the next week or so what materializes.
And you mentioned sanctions earlier, Alex. What kind of a difference do those kind of measures make? Germany too this morning saying that sanctions are on the table here in Europe.
So we have the regional sanctions at the moment, and in effect, budget aid and other types of assistance have been suspended by international partners. Niger is one of the poorest economies in the world. Over 40% of the population live in absolute poverty, and it's a landlocked country. So already we can see an increase of food prices. Life is going to get a lot more difficult for Niger. I have to say, as a former sanctions inspector, some of the sanctions look to me not targeted, but very blunt. And I do worry about some of the humanitarian consequences of sanctions. We've seen this also play out in Mali last year. But in the short term, this is going to really squeeze the junta. And that's the hope of ECOWAS, that such tight, difficult sanctions will force a quicker pace of off-ramping of the junta to a return to constitutional rule.
And speaking of the population there in Niger, how much support do you think there is for the junta? We saw tens of thousands rallying last night at a stadium cheering on the generals there.
So, I mean, the population of Niamey is much larger, and the stadium was not packed. Yes, there were plenty of spare spaces. So getting a crowd to show up is not necessarily that difficult. So what I do accept is that the coups in neighboring Burkina Faso and in Mali did have popular support. I still don't know how much support really this coup in Niger has. What I am sure is that the roots to the coup are not about popular discontent, but an elite dispute around the presidential guard, but maybe also partly linked to the really poor relationship that the current President Bazoum has with his predecessor, Mr. Issoufou.
And Alex, if coup leaders do remain in situ, what would the consequences be for the wider region? This is the 7th coup, I believe, in West and Central Africa in just 3 years now.
Well, we are in de facto a wrestling match between autocracies, the coup leaders, and democracies. So countries like Côte d'Ivoire, like Senegal, Ghana, and Nigeria. And so, there is high stakes here. If this coup were to succeed, I think that bodes very badly for the future of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, which is actually based on a principle of democracy and good governance. That's one of the founding protocols of the regional economic community. So this is a really important moment. We are at a watershed for West Africa, hence I think the very strong response that we're seeing from ECOWAS related to this, now 10-day-old coup in Niamey.
Dr. Alex Vines, Head of the Africa Programme at London's Chatham House, thank you so much for your time on the programme this afternoon.
Thank you.
Well, he's been on hunger strike since shortly after his arrest last month. Lawyers for Senegalese opposition leader Ousmane Sonko say he's being treated in hospital. A declared candidate for next year's presidential election, the 49-year-old has been engaged in a bitter power struggle with authorities since 2021, when he was placed under investigation for alleged corruption. In June, he was sentenced to 2 months in prison, a move that sparked deadly protests. For more on why Sonko went on hunger strike in protest against his detention, here's our correspondent in Dakar, Sam Bradpiece.
Well, it's worth looking firstly at why he was detained, so these most recent charges are pretty varied and numerous. He's charged with plotting insurrection, undermining state security, criminal conspiracy with a terrorist organization, among other things. And these are simply the latest charges against Ousmane Sonko. Earlier in the year, he had been found guilty of defaming a government minister. He'd also been found guilty of corrupting the youth after a sex scandal involving a young beauty salon employee. Now, to answer your initial question, why has this led to a hunger strike? Well, it's because Ousmane Sonko himself and his supporters believe that all of the judicial proceedings against him are politically motivated, that the government here in Senegal has essentially manipulated the judicial system in order to sideline Ousmane Sonko as the main political opponent. And that's certainly a very popular view here in Senegal.
Attacks have multiplied on both sides of the Black Sea since Russia exited a deal protecting grain exports from Ukraine, with Moscow hitting port infrastructure while Kyiv has been targeting Russia's Black Sea fleet. The Ukrainian Air Force says it shot down 30 cruise missiles overnight, while Kyiv struck 2 bridges in occupied territories. Russia also claims to have intercepted a Ukrainian drone southwest of Moscow amid a surge in such attacks targeting the capital. For more, we were joined earlier by our correspondent in Kyiv, Emmanuel Chaz.
Those attacks against bridges that are linking illegally occupied Crimea, because Crimea has been illegally occupied since 2014, to the occupied territories in the southern region of Kherson, have been hit over the weekend. There's 2 bridges, the Shona Bridge, the Henishers Bridge, and they have both been damaged by what Russia says is long-range Ukrainian missiles, Storm Shadow missiles, which had been provided by the UK to Ukraine. There's no confirmation on the Ukrainian side that it is with this type of missile that it has hit those bridges, but those strikes are very significant for Ukrainian counteroffensive. Why? Well, because there are supply lines for the Russian forces, and if they are damaged, that means that the Russian forces will have to use another route of supply, and that will be the eastern route that goes along the Sea of Azov, and this route is actually well within range of the Ukrainian artillery. So this could prove very efficient for the Ukrainian, very significant for the Ukrainian counter offensive. And we've seen an increase in those strikes on the Shona Bridge, on the Henishers Bridge, but also on the Crimean Bridge, which is linking the Russian Federation territory to illegally occupied Crimea.
Emmanuel Chaz reporting there from Kyiv. Well, Poland and Lithuania say they're bracing for provocations from Moscow and Minsk. The NATO nations are ramping up border security following the arrival of thousands of Wagner mercenaries in neighbouring Belarus after an aborted mutiny in Russia in June. Last week, 2 Belarusian helicopters flew briefly into Polish airspace in what was viewed as a provocation. Our correspondent there, Magdalena Chaudenik, sent this report.
Last Thursday, walking near her home in eastern Poland, Olivia noticed 2 helicopters. They'd managed to cross from Belarus despite intensive reinforcement of Polish border security.
One could presume that with the various uniformed services present in such numbers, these helicopters flew right over at least some of their heads. They were very low. You could see their Belarusian flags and red stars very well, and several thousand uniformed officers did not use their eyes.
The situation also worries Lithuania, already on high alert due to the Wagner Group's movements and migration crisis on its own borders with Belarus. The Lithuanian president and Polish prime minister met near the border to discuss it.
These provocations will be repeated. I have no doubt about it. But it is precisely moving military units here, strengthening the defensive line, including with physical fortifications, that is the action that protects our citizens.
Tym działaniem, które chroni naszych obywateli.
Poland and Lithuania now plan to strengthen their military cooperation.
The cooperation is now turning into very concrete forms of organization of military exercises.
Just like Poland, Lithuania has built a wall all along its border with Belarus. On the other side, Lithuania and Poland estimate that there are more than 4,000 members of the Russian mercenary group Wagner, something both countries consider a threat.
We have introduced a number of measures, technical systems, we deploy additional staff, we raise the level of border surveillance up to the highest level.
In case of new provocations, Poland and Lithuania do not rule out totally closing their borders with Belarus.
It's the latest flare-up in the long-seething territorial conflict over the disputed waters. The Philippines is demanding that Beijing cease what it describes as unlawful activities in the South China Sea. Manila has summoned the Chinese ambassador after the Coast Guard fired a water cannon to block a Filipino supply boat, describing the manoeuvre as excessive and offensive. Karis Garland has more.
Fresh tensions over a long-standing dispute. This video released by the Philippine Coast Guard shows their Chinese counterparts blasting a water cannon at a Philippine supply boat. The vessel was on its way to deliver provisions to Philippine troops stationed on 2nd Thomas Shoal, a submerged reef in the South China Sea. Then, in a move Manila has labelled excessive and offensive, the Chinese Coast Guard appears to block the supply boat's path. Speaking to the press on Monday, the Philippines said Beijing had no right whatsoever to impede its vessels.
We demand that the government of the People's Republic of China immediately cease and desist all its coercive, unlawful and unacceptable activities in the West Philippine Sea.
China, for its part, said the Philippines' boats had illegally entered its waters. Beijing claims almost all of the South China Sea, an assertion rejected internationally. The United States, the European Union and key allies like Australia and Japan all expressed support for Manila in the wake of the incident. The US State Department said the maneuvers were unwarranted interference in lawful Philippine maritime operations.
Such actions by the People's Republic of China are inconsistent with international law and are the latest in repeated threats to the status quo in the South China Sea, directly threatening regional peace and stability.
The Philippine military has occupied 2nd Thomas Shoal since 1999, when it deliberately marooned a Navy ship on the reef. China has long demanded the ship's removal and has in the past used lasers and water cannons to prevent Manila from delivering supplies to the atoll.
Staying in the region, at least 23 people were injured and dozens of buildings collapsed after a 5.4 magnitude earthquake struck eastern China in the early hours of Sunday. It was the strongest to hit the province there in more than a decade. Charlotte Hughes has more.
Here in eastern China, the aftermath of an earthquake which struck in the early hours of Sunday is clear for all to see. Dozens of residents have been injured and some have suffered damage to their homes. The quake struck 26 kilometers south of the city of Digicel in Shandong province, according to the US Geological Survey. It's the strongest to have hit the province in more than 10 years and was felt as far away as Shanghai, some 800 kilometers away from the epicenter. Despite damage to some buildings, water and communications infrastructure remained intact. A rescue team has been sent to Shandong province by China's Ministry of Emergency Management.
Finally, for now, in sports news, European champions England are through to the quarterfinals of the Women's World Cup after beating Nigeria on penalties. The The match ended 0-0 after extra time. The Lionesses won the shootout 4-2, missing just one attempt at goal. They've been favourites to win the tournament since defending champs the US were eliminated in a penalty shootout loss to Sweden on Sunday. England will now face Colombia or Jamaica in the quarterfinals in Sydney next Saturday. That's it from us for now, but do stay with us for more world news here on France 24.
On France24.com, click live. Find the stories you want to watch or to read about. Live news 24 hours a day in 4 languages. Explore the topics that captivate you. Are you looking for the latest news or to watch a show on demand? Follow us. Live international news is just a click away. Liberté, égalité, actualité.
Time now for French Connections, our weekly look at the intricacies of life here in France. And today we're going to turn to the spotlight on the French healthcare system. It's somewhat of an object of fascination abroad, often held up as an example for its quality of treatment and for its universality of coverage. But the system is actually facing some major problems which have led many medical professionals to go on strike.
That's right, Angela. In fact, perhaps the biggest and most urgent healthcare problem right now in France is a phenomenon that the French like to call a medical desert, a désert médical, or les déserts médicaux, if you're talking about them in the plural, because there are many of them. It's our expression du jour. You can see it here. Now, what in the world is a medical desert? Well, it's essentially an area where access to healthcare is limited, and this shortage can concern all sectors, whether it's doctors or dentists or specialists, but it especially concerns general practitioners around the country. It's estimated that about 12% of the French population, so 8 million French people, live in one of these medical deserts.
And where are they?
Well, let's take a look at a map, because that'll give you a better idea. In 2022, there were roughly 230,000 doctors in France. But as you can see on this map here, they're not equally distributed around the country. Where do doctors like to live? Well, it's the dark red on the map, and you can see, unsurprisingly, Paris and the beautiful Côte d'Azur right behind me here. Those are very popular destinations for doctors to set up their practices. Meanwhile, the areas that are lighter on the map are areas where there's a shortage of doctors. Essentially, medical at the deserts tend to be in rural and suburban France, essentially in areas where there's already a shortage of public services.
And this has been something people talk about in France, have been talking about it for 20 years more. What explains this shortage?
Well, it's a growing shortage, especially. It's for several reasons. First of all, the number of doctors per person in France has dropped over the years, and this is partially due to a now defunct policy that was called the numerus clausus, the closed number in Latin. And this was a policy that started in the 1970s in France, which essentially limited the number of doctors that could qualify in French medical schools. And at the time, the thinking was that this policy would actually reduce healthcare spending, which was spiraling out of control in France at the time. But essentially what it did is planted the seeds for the current catastrophic situation that France is right now. So not only are there fewer doctors than there used to be back in the years, they're also getting older. According to the World Health Organization, almost half of French doctors are over the age of 55 and approaching retirement. So local authorities essentially are really struggling to attract younger doctors to replace these retiring doctors, and all this really does affect patients.
Mon médecin est parti à la retraite il y a quelques années, son cabinet n'a pas été repris, il n'y a personne derrière, donc c'était l'enfer pour trouver un médecin.
So what are the solutions to these medical deserts?
Well, the government has scrapped this numerus clausus, this cap on the number of medical doctors, but it will take a few years for that policy to bear its fruit. They're also trying to ease the workload of existing doctors by essentially delegating tasks to qualified nurses and pharmacists, and also promoting video consultations that people can do over the computer. But that doesn't doesn't really address this big issue of geographic inequalities. And so recently, some 200 lawmakers tabled an amendment to what they call regulate a doctor's freedom to set up practice, essentially try and control where doctors can set up their practices.
Ce que nous souhaitons, c'est dire une chose toute simple à nos médecins. N'allez plus là où les besoins de santé sont déjà pourvus.
Now, in the end, that amendment was actually voted down, but as you can imagine, it really was met by outrage, both by doctor unions and also by medical students. Take a listen.
On a déjà des études suffisamment longues et qui épuisent pas mal notre énergie, donc je trouve que c'est assez injuste en soi de nous forcer du coup indirectement à aller travailler dans des déserts médicaux.
And things have got so bad that some of these smaller villages have taken it upon themselves to try to attract young doctors.
Absolutely. Many of them are so desperate that they've really pulled out all the stops to try and attract young medical students to their rural areas. And it's really a charm offensive. You can see this tour bus here. This is what some villages are doing. They're organizing these fancy tours to show off the attractiveness of their area. They're having cocktail parties and receptions, trying to woo over these medical students. They're also having all sorts of financial incentives, for instance, a lump sum for doctors to set up their practices, or even free rent for a certain amount of time. And some have gone even a little bit further than that, and they're actually paying for medical students during their lengthy studies.
La mairie s'assure d'avoir un médecin dans quelques années, alors que toutes les communes du coin cherchent un peu désespérément à récupérer des médecins. Et de l'autre côté, moi, du coup, j'ai une sérénité pendant mes études au niveau financier.
But aside from those charm offensives, there is also this issue of pay, which is it's a big question in France, because in the past, brace yourself if you're in America, because this figure is going to be crazy for you. In the past, the basic consultation fee was 25 euros at a general practitioner. It can be a little bit higher if you go to a specialist. And so if you're American, this is staggering because it's very cheap. But in France, this is a key feature of French healthcare, is that it's affordable and subsidized by the state. So doctors have been calling for an increase in this basic consultation fee, because they say, you know, the cost of living is rising, and they want that consultation fee to increase as well.
Nous, on veut investir dans du matériel, on veut investir dans du personnel, on veut investir dans des locaux aussi pour recevoir nos patients, et clairement pas s'en mettre dans les poches.
Now, the government did recently announce that it would increase the basic consultation fee to 26.50 euros, which many doctors say just isn't enough. On the other hand, patients tend to like this price. But all this means that GPs sometimes can drift away from the profession, and many young people might think twice before becoming doctors. And all this might threaten France's very cherished healthcare system at its very foundation.
That's it for now. In the meantime, you can tweet your questions at Flo Villeminot and check out our website, france24.com.
They observe. They contact us. They report, film, photograph. They are the voice of the voiceless. Your eyes in the far-flung reaches of the world. The Observers, a network of 5,000 committed citizens working with France 24.
One of our observers in Côte d'Ivoire, Gaspard.
Amateur footage and testimonials checked by our journalists and broadcast weekly on The Observers, on France 24 and observers.france24.com. On france24.com, click live. Find the stories you want to watch or to read about. Live news 24 hours a day in 4 languages. Explore the topics that captivate you. Are you looking for the latest news or to watch a show on demand? Follow us. Live international news is just a click away. Liberté, égalité, actualité.
a programme about women who are reshaping our world. We meet those who seek equality, be it in the boardroom or at the village well. The 51% brings you stories from across the globe about the women who are challenging the way we think.
The 51%, presented by Annette Young on France 24 and France24.com.
WESN.